Canadians, the Americans, the New Zealanders, all the people who came from the Commonwealth into that war area were away from their homes, but they had the satisfaction of knowing that their homes were safe, their families were safe, whereas we didn't. The guys who fought in North Africa, in Italy, in Malaya, Burma, they were not only away from their homes, but they were also away from their families. They never knew whether their families were safe or not.
So what was your diet like at the time? What kind of foods could you
Amazingly, probably better than what we eat today as far as your health is concerned. The bread was, there's no such thing as white bread. They ground the whole husk and everything, so the bread was a sort of a dirty brown color. And what was that? 1 egg a month, and about 2 ounces of meat a week. Very rigid diet. Sugar was about, what, 6 ounces? She can remember more than I can about that. Yeah, our food was very, very tight. Cars, nobody had gas for cars, except very essential people like doctors and emergency people. But in those days we didn't have birth control pills, etc. And my wife became pregnant.
Yes.
And I went back to the government agency that granted me the grant to go back to school, and I said, gentlemen, I have a request to make of you. My wife is expecting a child, and the grant that you've made to me to go back to school is hardly sufficient to keep the pair of us. And they looked at me and they said, it's not our fault your wife's expecting a baby, is it? And I felt like ploughing the guy.
Of course.
Actually, British vets were not treated as well as Canadian vets were. And I came home, and my wife remembers this, she'd never seen me cry before, but a year to the day that I came out of the Navy, I was out of a job. And I cried, I really did. I don't mind admitting it. I thought, what kind of a world have we come to? But the conditions in Britain, believe it or not, 7 years after the war finished, we were still rationed. And we just couldn't seem to make headway. We had 2 little girls, and opportunity seemed to beckon towards getting the heck out of there and going to somewhere where there was an opportunity. I met a Canadian. He was a school teacher in Windsor, a principal of Dougal Avenue School. His name was Bob Fuller. And he wrote to me when he got back to Canada, and we exchanged letters a few times. He said, come on out to Canada, we need good policemen. And I said, here I have a wife, an only child, 2 little girls, and a job I loved. And I said, what do we do? We came down to breakfast one Sunday morning, and banner headlines across the Sunday Express, I always remember it, Sunday newspaper, very conservative newspaper by the way, and it said, coal goes up again in price on Monday. And I looked at my wife and I thought, my God, you know what it's going to mean? Everything's going to go up in price, because at that time Britain depended upon coal for power. And I looked at my wife when I read those headlines and I said, Canada, dear? She said, let's. I said, I'm serious. She said, so am I. I said, you know what it means? She said, yeah. So we sold everything we had, left her with some money, and she went to stay with her mother and father, and many tears were shed, and I departed for Canada. Landed in Windsor with $27 in my pocket. That's all they'd let you bring out of the country. The equivalent of £10, 27 bucks. I can honestly say, when we took our eldest girl to Britain with us a few years back, and she was born there, and we did a lot of traveling together, and she said something to me which I will never forget. She said, thanks for bringing me to live in Canada. Amen.